Good morning, everyone. Today we will be discussing about pediatric and neonatal IC care or intensive care, which comes under the module of critical care. So, as we are facing this coronavirus threat, we will be delivering these lectures as recordings that you all know. So, without wasting any time, let's move on to the PPT. So, today, first of all, we will discuss about neonatal and pediatric intensive care. Right. Let's start with a definition. Now, who is a neonate? Neonate can be defined as baby less than 4 weeks old or 20 days, 28 days old. What is this? From the newborn or from the birth till 28 days or up to 4 weeks, that time period we can call it the neonatal time period. Right? So, who's a neonate? Again, the definition: a baby or a newborn less than 4 weeks or 28 days of age. Okay, that is a neonate. Right. So you have to you got to know this definition. That is very much important because the definition has a big role during this chapter and in day-to-day practices. Right. So then, as healthcare professionals, we should know the age-appropriate vital signs. What are those? What is this age-appropriate vital sign? Now, for an example, for a baby, if the heart rate is 160, are we calling that condition the the tachycardia? No, because the heart rate of a newborn up to 180, 80 to 180, that's normal. So that is the age appropriate vital sign of heart rate or vital value of the heart rate. Then respirations between 30 to 60 and blood pressure systolic between 60 to 80 and diastolic between 30 to 60. So that is the normal value of a neonate. Then during in toddler age, what is the toddler period? From 28 days till the school age up to 5-6 years, we call that period the toddler period. During that period, heart rate being up to 110, that is normal. Then respirations up to 32 per minute, that's normal. Then blood pressure or BP up to systolic 90 to 100 and diastolic 50 to 65, that is the normal value. Then school age, you got the values here. Then during adolescent period, you got the values here. Then as an adult, we know what is the normal value for heart rate, that is between 60 to 100. If it's more than 100, we call it the tachycardia, and it's below 60, we call it the bradycardia. Then respiration rate between 12 to 20, that is the normal value. Then blood pressure between 110 to 140 systolic and 60 to 90 diastolic. We know the normal value. What is that? 120 over 80 mercury millimeters. Right. Then let's move on to this scoring system. There's a scoring system, as you all know, that is APGAR score. We use APGAR score for what? To assess the baby after getting born, after delivery. At the first minute, we check the APGAR score, and in the 5th minute, we check the APGAR score during 1st minute and 5th minute to assess the baby, to assess the baby's condition. So here A stands for activity or the muscle tone. Then P stands for what? Pulse. Then G stands for grimace or reflex irritability. Basically, what is that? Cry. Then A again stands for appearance or skin color. Then R for respiration, respiratory activity. So here, if the baby is active or the muscle tone is active, as you can see here, we give 2 points. Then for pulse, if it's more than 100 beats per minute, we give 2 points. Then the grimace, or if the baby cries in a good manner or prompt response to stimulation, we give 2 points. Then A or appearance, if the skin color is pink, we are checking that here, bluish pale, cyanosis. But here when it's pink, we give 2 points. Then respiration, when there's vigorous cry, we give 2 points. right? So again, activity, pulse, grimace, appearance and respiration, that is the APGA score, right? So maybe you have seen in first minute and fifth minute, we clock the baby, we assess the baby, and we note down the APGA value, right? Then you need to know the specific requirements of your organization. In general, the following are admission procedures for neonates to the NICU. What is the NICU? Neonatal Intensive Care Unit, right? So these are the admission procedures for a NICU. What are those criteria or admission procedures? First one, history of delivery and present problem. If there's a problem during delivery, and if there's a problem now, then that we consider as a criteria. Then physical assessment of the neonate. If the physical assessment fails, or if there's a problem, we consider it as an admission criteria. Then vital signs, clinical assessment, and maintenance if there are difficulties. So that's an admission procedure. Then maintenance of body temperature to prevent heat loss. Then perform investigations like lab and radiological procedures as prescribed. Then perform other prescriptions or procedures prescribed, right? So here we have the specific criteria for admission to the NICU. Now why do we have a criteria here? Because the NICU or neonatal intensive care units, we have very limited space, a very limited number of incubators, or very limited number of placements, very limited number of places available. So we have a prioritizing criteria here. We give priority to some patients, and we don't give much priority for other patients, right? So let's check what are the prioritized conditions or criteria for admissions to the NICU. First one, that is low birth weight babies. Then normally if the baby is premature and the birth weight is very low, we give priority for the NICU admission. Then large size babies, if the baby is being very large, and that may cause complications, so we consider it as a criteria. Then malpresentation or fetal distress. If there's a distress syndrome, or if there's a malpresentation, there may be a breech delivery, and there may be complications. So according to the fetal distress, we give priority, or that we consider as a criteria. Then if the baby is suffering from birth asphyxia, then if there are congenital malformations, and if there are neonatal convulsions, which may be like seizures, episodes of seizures. Then any other baby who needs special care determined by pediatrician or intensivist. So these are the main criteria for getting admitted to NICU. We don't admit each and every baby. Who are the babies we can treat outside of the NICU, we do so. And in these conditions, and there are if there's any major complication, we admit these babies to NICU, right? So here you can see a normal baby and a large size baby. So these kind of babies we consider it as a priority criteria for admission at NICU. So here you have two videos, you can watch them when you get the presentation. You can always get the presentation from Moodle. I think you all know that by now. So let's move on to the next table. These things we have extracted from your textbook, so refer to your textbook always. There are three types of neonatal care as shown in table 4.1. What are the types of care? Basically, what you have to remember here, there are three types of care or neonatal intensive care. First, intensive care itself, then the special care, then normal care. Here again, types of care. First one, intensive care, special care, normal care. What you have to remember here is intensive care given by a skilled nursing and medical personnel who are specially trained for this. Okay, skilled nursing and medical personnel give the intensive care. Special care given by a normal nurse. Okay, not needing the skilled and special nursing care. So given by a normal nurse in ICU, normal care given by mother under the supervision of nurses and midwives. Okay, so first of all, intensive care given by a skilled nurse or healthcare professional. This case, special care by a normal nurse, and normal care by mother under the supervision of nurses and midwives. So these are the qualities. So these are the things that a good neonatal intensive care unit must fulfill. For NICU, to be a good NICU, the NICU or the neonatal intensive care unit must fulfill the criteria given below. What are those? 5% of beds should be allocated for neonatal ICU if they have a maternity ward. Okay, 5% of beds should be allocated for NICU if they have a maternity ward. Now, for an example, what is this? If they have a maternity ward, out of that, out of number of the beds, let's say they have 100 beds of the maternity ward, then at least there must be 5 beds for neonatal ICU, right? Then unit should be close to the maternity ward and operating theaters. Yes, that is very much important, because why? Let's imagine the maternity ward is in one building and the NICU is on another building, 3rd floor, and operating theaters on the same building, ground floor. So that's not practical at all. NICU unit should be very close to the, or easily accessible to the maternity ward and to the theater, right? Cubicle, single room or open area setup we can use. If there's open area setup, we know there must be a gap between 2 incubators or 2 areas. So single room conception is also there. Then cubicle concept is also there. Then allocated area for each baby should be 10 square meters or 2 meters from next radiant heater. Now here the bed gap, or the gap between in an open area setup, gap between cubicles, so gap between heaters or gap between phototherapy units should be at least 2 meters. Now these days we are talking about what, the 1 meter gap. Yes, the social distancing. So here, to be a good NICU, anyways, without coronavirus even, the 2 meter gap should be there from one bed to another bed, right? Then adequate facilities to maintain aseptic and sterile environment, that is very much important. There's nothing more to discuss. Then patient to nurse ratio should be 1:1. There must be 1 nurse for 1 patient, like that. Then be baby friendly and mother encouraging. Sometimes nurses are not focusing on that part, but you have to be baby friendly and mother encouraging. That is very much important for mother's health, right? Then importance of PICU, pediatric intensive care unit. Now what is NICU? The neonatal intensive care unit. Here PICU means pediatric intensive care unit. Now who are the people getting admitted at PICU? Anyone from 28 days till 18 years of age, we call them children. Any children can get admitted at PICU. Okay, neonate in NICU, babies up to 28 days. In PICU, any baby from 28 days to or adolescent up to 18 years of age, we can admit them in PICU. So pediatric intensive care unit is an important component of tertiary pediatric care services. PICU aims at promoting qualified care for critically ill children. These units are points of major technology transfer and constitute one of the main consumers of hospital budgets. Yes, now PICU require a big hospital budget to maintain their facilities or to deliver a good care for its clients or patients, right? Here there's an author reported that 15 to 20% of hospital budgets are spent in ICUs. So that is very much important for the care given by ICU. Here there's another article. Abdul Monim 2001 reported that ICUs consume 10% of hospital beds, 30% of acute care hospital costs, and more than 20% of hospital budgets. Yes. So these data shows how important that is to maintain ICU in a good condition, to spend and to maintain a ICU in a good condition. So here you can see from one unit to another the gap must be 2 meters minimum. So and this is open area setup. As you know, in open area we have cubicles, and the gap cubicles as in the radiant heaters, so the gap is around 2 meters, and one baby is allocated 10 square meters of space, right? Here also you can see a picture of a NICU. They have a gap between units, and one baby has 10 square meters of an area allocated for him or her, right? So these are the main equipments that we use in NICU or PICUs. What are the main equipments? Let's start with the topmost one, the ventilators. Ventilator design, neonatal or pediatric ventilators. Then incubators or the transport incubators. Here we have then transporting incubators, we have which we can transfer. Then phototherapy units, then pulse oximeters, hemodynamic monitors, then electronic weighing scales or electronic scales, which is very much important to check baby's weight. So these are the main equipments for NICU or a PICU. There are many more equipments, but these are the must equipments or the main equipments, right? So here you can see a phototherapy unit where we treat for babies who have jaundice and the pathological jaundice and other conditions. And here you can see transporting incubators with wheels. We can transport these incubators from one point to another, right? So what is this? This is a complete NICU unit or a mobile NICU unit, which we can transfer in an ambulance to care for a baby. Here you can see that consists of monitors, the cardiac monitors and everything. Then also the ECG machines are there. Then the incubator is there, oxygen supply is there. Then there are other monitors attached. Then there's BHTs, and everything is basically ventilators and everything is there. So that is a transporting or mobile incubator unit. So along with the presentation, every time we said that ICU care given for critically ill children, or NICU or PICU care given for critically ill children. So that is important to know who is the critically ill child. Now when we see a child, we should be able to check, or we should be able to know whether the child is critically ill or not. Critically ill child means a child who is in a critical state which may result in respiratory or cardiac arrest or severe neurologic complication. What is this? A child who is in a clinical state which may result in respiratory, cardiac or severe neurological complication. We call such child a critically ill child. Risk for critical illness may be primary cardiovascular, respiratory or secondary to neurologic, infectious or metabolic disorders. Right. So primarily this critical illness could be due to cardiovascular, respiratory, that is primary. But secondary to that could be secondary in neurologic. So what is this? Neurologic, infectious or metabolic disorders, there's a very less chance of them to cause a direct cardiac arrest or respiratory arrest. So basically or primarily the critical illness is due to, in neonates, the critical illness must be due to cardiovascular respiratory problem. Second, that is secondary to neurologic, infectious or other causes, right? Infection is the most common. The third point, infection is the most common, and septic shock is a catastrophic immune system reaction which produce organ failure. Now here in this condition, infection is the most common, and septic shock is a catastrophic immune system reaction. Infection, there's a chance of an infection always leading to septic shock or sepsis, as you know, and that starts with what? The SIRS syndrome. Yes, SIRS or SIRS syndrome, which stands for systemic inflammatory response syndrome. We call that SIRS syndrome, systemic inflammatory response syndrome. And with that, if there are some criteria, we call the next stage this sepsis, then severe sepsis, then we go to the septic shock, then the MODS or multiple organ dysfunction syndrome, right? So in PICUs and NICUs, there are levels of care. Basically, these levels, we divide them into three main groups: level 1 care, level 2 care, and level 3 care. Level 1 care, pay attention to the first point. Level 1 care here, required by 80 to 85% of babies. Mothers at this level can care for their babies with supervision by nurses. In types of care, we discuss this as normal care. Usually caters to term babies and those weighing over 2000 grams. Basic facilities like resuscitation, radiant warm and phototherapy available in the unit. Right. Then we have another care, level 2 care. This level involves care with resuscitation facilities, clinical and non-invasive monitoring. Now, this level 2 care given for babies less than 37 weeks of the gestational period and less than 2000 grams. Level 3 care provide intensive care facilities like ventilatory support and invasive monitoring. Babies weighing less than 1500 grams, sorry, 1500 grams, so 1.5 kilograms, or with less than 34 weeks of gestation are given level 3 care. Now here, level 1 care for normal babies, term babies over 2000. Level 2 care, less than 37 weeks, less than 2000 grams. Level 3 care, less than 34 weeks, less than 1500 grams. So level 1, level 2 and level 3. Furthermore, these levels are divided into sub-levels also. We will discuss them. Level 1 neonatal care, or the basic care, provide neonatal resuscitation and every delivery, and provide care for infants born at 35 to 37 weeks or who remain physiologically stable. Stabilize newborn infants who are ill and those born at less than 35 weeks until transfer to a facility providing an appropriate level of care. So basically, term babies more than 2000 grams, as we discussed. Level 2 care divided into two parts here. Level 2 subdivided into 2A and 2B based on ability to provide assisted ventilation including CPAP. Level 2A care resuscitate and stabilize preterm or ill infants before transfer to a facility providing newborn intensive care. Provide care for infants born at more than 32 weeks and weighing more than 1500 grams. Now we discussed in level 2 care, that is basically provided for infants. Yes, here. Now always go back here. Less than 37, less than 2000 here. So level 2A, less than 2000, of course more than 1500. Now if the baby is below 1500 grams, we are sending baby for the which care? The level 3 care, and less than 37 weeks, so that should be more than 32 weeks for sure. With physiologic immaturity such as apnea of prematurity, inability to maintain body temperature, and inability to take oral feedings, who are moderately ill with problems anticipated to resolve rapidly and are not anticipated to need subspecialty service urgently, who are convalescing after intensive care, right? Level 2B care given for babies like here. All capabilities of level 2A is there. Provide mechanical ventilation for brief durations less than like 24 hours or CPAP. Neonatal units supervised by board certified neonatologists. Limited pediatric subspecialty services. No neonatal surgical specialty services. No primary or infant or maternal referrals. Right. Then we have level 3. care of NICU. Level 3 NICUs are subdivided into two categories based on the availability of ECMO facility and cardiac surgeries. Right here you can see that's a very special care given for babies. The level 3 neonatal intensive care, babies who are with complications and who need surgical support or surgical correction, we admit them for the level 3 NICU care. Right. So ECMO machine we use for what? To purify oxygen. Blood low in oxygen flows to ECMO machine here. Then blood containing oxygen is returned to, or oxygenated blood returned into the body. So this is the site of cannula insertion, just like what this reminds you of which unit, the dialysis unit. Yes. So level 3 NICU, especially for comprehensive care for low birth weight babies, less than 1000 grams or less than 1500 also we can admit depending on the condition, or 34 weeks and in our case 20 if the baby is less than 20 weeks of gestation, also we can admit to this care. Advanced respiratory support such as HFVN, inhaled nitrous oxide as long as needed. Then prompt and on-site access to full range of pediatric medical subspecialties. Advanced imaging facilities are there like CT, MRI, echo. The ped surgical specialist and anesthesiologist on site who work closely. Related institution perform major surgery such as PDA ligation. What is that? The patent ductus arteriosus. Then abdominal wall defects, the neck with perforation, then the transesophageal fistula with or without atresia, then like myelomeningocele. Like so, let's move on to the next condition. So this is esophageal fistula. In normal anatomy, here in normal case we can see there's trachea, then there's esophagus, respiratory tract, and the GI tract or gastrointestinal tract, and that is situated differently or situated in two special places, in their own places. Right here in atresia with distal fistula, here the esophagus is not completely connected to each other and the distal part is connected to trachea. If the distal part connected to trachea, we call that distal fistula, atresia with distal fistula. Then what should be the next one? Atresia with proximal fistula. If this part attaches here, proximal fistula. If both the things happen, atresia with double fistula here. Proximal part also attached to trachea, distal part also attached to trachea. Then this is atresia when there is no attachment, and this is complete fistula. GI tract attached, the GI tract is intact, and trachea is also intact, but there's a connection. So this is fistula. Right. So I think basically we understood the anatomy of these fistulas. Right. So in tracheoesophageal fistula or TE fistula, there are three main signs. We call them 3 C's. First one, choking, coughing, and cyanosis. Cyanosis, the peripheral and central cyanosis, you know how to assess those things. So what are the 3 C's of TE fistulas? Choking, coughing, and cyanosis. Right. Then we have another condition. Now we are discussing about the babies who are needing level 3 neonatal care or level 3 plus neonatal care. We said at the very beginning, babies who need surgical corrections for the complications, they we admit them under level 3 plus neonatal care. Right. So here there's another condition, myelomeningocele. Level 3 plus NICU, all capabilities of level 3 NICU and capabilities to provide ECMO and surgical repair of complex congenital heart malformations requiring cardiopulmonary bypass. Right. So let's move on to this thing. Right. What are the types of cases in such care? Respiratory distress syndrome like diaphragmatic hernia or meconium aspiration syndrome. In case of congenital heart diseases, in case of gastrointestinal anomalies like gastrochiasis and omphalocele. Then multi-organ failure mods like Reye syndrome. We will see some of these things. So here we can see a diaphragmatic hernia where the intestines are gone to, and the organs here, a part of liver and intestines are gone into the thoracic cavity through a hole in diaphragm. Okay, so that condition we call it a diaphragmatic hernia. So here you can see a baby getting treated for diaphragmatic hernia. Sorry, here intestines protruding through a hole in diaphragm, so this causes severe complications like this diaphragmatic hernia. So here you can see in a CXR or chest X-ray in dark black color, you can see the intestinal parts which are protruded through a hole in diaphragm. Okay, these are intestines. Right here again you can see the diaphragmatic hernia. A large part of intestines have gone or protruded through a hole in diaphragm to the thoracic cavity, and that may cause severe complications. So from a basic chest X-ray we can check this condition and get an idea about that. Right, so here also you can see the paths gone through diaphragm. Right, then there's a video. This is what is this? This is these are, yes, you know, meconium. Yes, so meconium aspiration syndrome, when the meconium is there, sometimes baby accidentally might swallow this meconium, and that may cause some complications. So this condition we call meconium aspiration syndrome, and there's a video. When you get the PPT, you can watch this video, and that will give you a clear idea about meconium aspiration syndrome. Right, so these are cardiac anomalies or cardiac congenital cardiac abnormalities. Here you have VSD, ventricular septal defect. The two ventricles are not separated completely, and here we have ASD, arterial septal defect. Two atrial septal defect. Two atriums are not separated completely. So what's happening here in VSD and ASD is the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood getting mixed. That can cause severe complications. And here again you can see a VSD. Then there's overriding aorta, pulmonary stenosis here. Then right ventricular hypertrophy due to pulmonary stenosis. Why? To pump blood through this valve, the right ventricle has to work hard, so it increases in size. Right, so you can see a baby with cardiac many complications. Right, now what is this? Intestinal parts can see outside of the body. So this is here there are two major differences. As you can see here, the intestines you can see just outside of the body, but here you can see the intestines, so GI parts or GI organs are situated outside of the body but in a sac. So these two are two different conditions. First condition, if the intestinal contents are outside of the body, inside the sac we call that omphalocele. Here omphalocele. If the intestines are outside of the abdomen through a hole in the abdomen, and if those are like freely outside, we call that gastroschisis. Here this is a gastroschisis. Here that's a omphalocele. Now there's a way of remembering this. All the seals, omphalocele, hydrocele, then myelomeningeocele, everything. If the basically if the term seal is there, that is that's covered with a sac. Now for an example, hydrocele, you know, the testicles, so that's kind of covered with the sac, right? Not freely swollen. So that kind of thing we call that a seal. So here, when the intestines are outside of the body in a sac, we call that an omphalocele. When intestines are outside of the body freely, we call that gastroschisis. Then next one of the severe condition, MODS or multiple organ dysfunction syndrome. Simultaneous occurrence of at least two organ failure. These two organs should be major organs or vital organs. What are those? Is brain, heart, liver, kidneys, basically lungs. Yeah. So failure of at least two organs, we call that one criteria for multiple organ dysfunction syndrome. MODS is important because of its frequent occurrence and its association with high mortality in the pediatric intensive care unit. So when there's MODS, there's a high mortality rate. 25% of children admitted to PICU has MODS, and that mortality associated with up to 50%. Now, for an example, what is this? If 100 children are admitted at PICU or pediatric intensive care unit, 25% of these children, they have MODS. Out of these 25 children, the mortality rate is up to 12 or 13. Out of these 25, 50% of them, they die. So that means mortality is up to 12 to 13 children who are getting admitted to ICU. Now, if the 100 children are there, if the count is 100, 25% of them, or 25 children approximately, undergoes MODS condition, and out of these 25, out of 100, 12 to 13 children, or babies, they die. In fact, from 97% to 100% of the deaths in PICU have been related to MODS. When there's a death in PICU, up to 90%, 97% to 100%, that is due to MODS. So that is the thing we should know here. Right. So pathway of deterioration in critical illness I have given here. The intrinsic lung diseases, these are the basic conditions: airway diseases, inadequate respiratory effort, the cardiogenic and hypovolemic shock conditions, and the table shows how it leads to the complications, right? Then sequelae of infection in critically ill child, the infection, this syndrome, then sepsis, severe sepsis, and MODS, and eventually that leads to death. You can refer to these tables when you get the PPT. Right. Goal of nursing management in a case of NICU and PICU. First goal is to stabilize the baby's hemodynamic monitoring, then to prevent any further complication associated, then to report abnormal lab and radiological investigations promptly, to establish an interpersonal rapport with immediate family members, to perform nursing care and drug administration safely. Quality monitoring in PICU. How to monitor the quality? By estimation of disease severity, probability of death are important elements in determining the prognosis. A more accurate prognosis assessment can lead to more appropriate monitoring, proper management, and family counseling. ICU scoring systems are designated to determine probable outcome. ICU scoring systems are PRISM, pediatric risk of mortality, pediatric index of mortality, the PIM or PIM, then pediatric logistic organ dysfunction, PELOD scores. We have to check the outcomes of the ICU, or check the quality, or check the in quality monitoring in ICUs, pediatric and neonatal ICUs. We have PRISM score, PIM score, and PELOD scores. Right. So scoring systems in PICU, that depends on prognosis, therapeutic and therapeutic requirements and efficiency of requirements, and illness severity of the illness. Right. So the last part of this presentation is the care of children. Who are defined as children? Children can be defined as any child from neonate to 18 years of age. Now, we said neonates to babies who are less than 28 days of age, but from 28 days till 18 years we can call them children. Okay, not until puberty. Most of the time, most of the students, they confuse that children, we call them children until up to puberty. No, that's wrong. Up to 18 years of age we can call them children. So that is the definition. Okay, any child or neonate, any child from neonatal period, that means from 28 days to 18 years of age, can call him or her a child. So different categories of children: we have infants, the toddlers, preschool, school age, and adolescents. So that's it about this presentation. If you have any questions, you can always ask us. You got the Viber, WhatsApp connections, and you can email us, and you can anytime you can send your questions. We will be more than happy to answer them. And thank you very much for your time. We wish all of you to be safe during this time period, and we hope to see you soon. So thank you again. Thank you very much.